The discovery, the red sun of Nova Terra, painted the mining colony in shades of rust and copper as captain. James Reed walked along the perimeter fence. His boots crunched on the dusty ground while he checked the defense turrets. They were old models, barely enough to scare off pirates. The colony had been here for 5 years, and nothing exciting had ever happened. That changed when his radio crackled to life. Captain read, "You need to get down to Shaft 7 immediately." The voice belonged to Dr. Emma Walsh, the colony's chief scientist. Her tone carried an urgency he had never heard before. James broke into a run toward the mining complex. The elevators took him down 300 meters into the planet's crust. When the doors opened, he found Emma standing before a massive metal door that had not been there yesterday. The walls around it were covered in symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. "We broke through an hour ago," Emma said, her eyes wide with excitement and fear. "James, this is not natural. Someone built this, and it is old. Very old." Governor Richard Hayes arrived moments later, breathing hard from the climb down. He was a heavy man who preferred his office to the rough conditions of the mining tunnels. "What is the meaning of this? Why was I not informed immediately?" "Because we needed to be sure," Emma replied. She gestured to the door. "Governor, I think we have found something from the ancients." The room fell silent. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the ancients. They were the mysterious race that had built wonders across the stars millions of years ago, and vanished without a trace. Their technology was so advanced that modern civilizations looked like children playing with toys in comparison. "Can we open it?" James asked. Emma nodded. "Already did. That is why I called you." "James, the door opened when I touched it. Only when I touched it. None of the alien workers could make it respond." James felt a chill run down his spine. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the door. The symbols flared bright blue, and the massive door began to slide open with a sound like thunder. Beyond lay a chamber that stretched farther than their lights could reach. In the center stood a pillar of crystal that pulsed with energy. Strange machines lined the walls, their purpose unknown, but their power undeniable. "My God," Richard whispered. "Do you know what this means?" "If we can understand this technology, if we can understand it, we become targets," Lieutenant Tom Grant interrupted. He had followed James down and now stood at the entrance, his weapon ready. Tom was young but smart, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Every empire in the galaxy will want this. Tom was right, and they all knew it. Humanity was the newest race to join the Galactic Council. The older civilizations looked down on humans as primitives who had barely learned to travel between stars. The great empires had been spacefaring for thousands of years. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop stars. Humans had none of that. They survived on the edges of civilized space by being clever and staying beneath notice. This discovery would change everything. "We need to report this to Earth Command," Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. He knew what would happen. The Council would claim the site, remove it from human control, and humanity would gain nothing but resentment from the older races. Emma was already working, setting up scanners around the crystal pillar. "The energy readings are incredible. This thing is still active after millions of years. And look at this." She pointed to a screen showing wave patterns. "These energy signatures match human neural patterns. It is like the system recognizes us." "That is impossible," Richard said. "Humans evolved on Earth. The ancients disappeared long before life on our world became complex." "I know what the data says," Emma shot back. "Impossible or not, this technology responds to humans and only humans." James was about to respond when alarms began blaring throughout the colony. His radio exploded with chatter. He grabbed it and barked. "This is Reed. Report. Sir, we have ships entering orbit, the communications officer said, panic in her voice. Multiple contacts, military grade. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. It is the Vrax Empire. James felt his blood turn to ice. The Vrax were one of the most aggressive races in the galaxy. They were large reptilian creatures who believed that strength was the only virtue worth having. Their empire had conquered dozens of worlds, and they showed no mercy to those they considered weak. What do they want? Richard asked, his face pale. The answer came seconds later as the Vrax transmission played over the colony speakers. The voice was deep and harsh, filtered through translation software that made it sound even more threatening. Humans of Nova Terra, this is Commander Kraz of the Vrax Fourth Fleet. You have illegally occupied a site of ancient significance. By order of the Vrax Emperor, you are commanded to evacuate this planet within 24 hours. Any human found here after that time will be destroyed. This is your only warning. The transmission ended, leaving only static and the sound of 400 colonists holding their breath. James looked at Emma, then at Richard, then at Tom. They all knew what this meant. The Vrax did not make empty threats. In 24 hours, if the humans were still here, the Vrax fleet would turn the colony into ash. We cannot fight them, Richard said quietly. We have 3 patrol ships and some mining vessels. They have warships. We cannot leave either, Emma said. Sir, if the Vrax claim this site, they will have access to ancient technology. Do you understand what that means? They are already one of the strongest empires. With this power, they would be unstoppable. Tom checked his weapon and looked at James. What are your orders, Captain? James stared at the crystal pillar, still pulsing with its strange blue light. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he felt something. A connection. A whisper of possibility. The system recognized humans. It responded to them. Maybe, just maybe, it would fight for them too. Get everyone to the shelters, James said. Emma, I need you to figure out what this thing can do. Tom, prepare the defense teams. Governor, send a message to Admiral Park and tell her we need reinforcements immediately. But James, Richard protested, we cannot hold out for more than a few hours against the Vrax fleet. James turned to face them all, his jaw set with determination. Then we had better learn fast. Because I am not letting them take our discovery, and I am not letting them take our home. We have 24 hours to turn this ancient site into a weapon. Let us get to work. Above them, in the cold darkness of space, 12 Vrax warships settled into orbit around Nova Terra, their weapons charged and ready, their crews eager for battle. They did not know that the humans below had just made a choice that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. The countdown had begun. Asterisk, the awakening Emma, had not slept in 16 hours. Her team worked frantically in the ancient chamber, running every test they could think of. The crystal pillar hummed with energy, responding to their presence, but revealing none of its secrets. Coffee cups littered the makeshift workstation, and data scrolled across dozens of screens. Try the harmonic frequency again, Emma said to her assistant. A young man named David, who had been a mining engineer before this discovery, turned their quiet colony into a potential war zone. David adjusted the equipment, and the pillar's glow intensified. The symbols on the walls began to shift, rearranging themselves into new patterns. Emma felt her heart race. They were making progress, but time was running out. 12 hours had already passed since the Vrax ultimatum. Above ground, Jane stood in the command center, watching the orbital display. The Vrax ships maintained their position, 12 red dots hovering like vultures. His own forces looked pathetic by comparison. 3 patrol vessels, armed with missiles that would barely scratch a Vrax warship's shields. The mining ships had no weapons at all. Admiral Park responded to our message, the communications officer said. She is bringing the Third Fleet at maximum speed, but she cannot reach us for another 3 days. Asterisk 3 days. They had 12 hours. Tom entered the command center, his face grim. Shelters are at capacity. We have all non-essential personnel underground. Defense teams are in position. But James, we both know those turrets will last maybe 5 minutes against Vrak's bombardment. I know, James said quietly. He pulled up historical data on his screen, reading about past Vrak's conquests. The pattern was always the same. They arrived, they made demands, and then they destroyed anyone who resisted. Entire colonies had been wiped out. The Galactic Council always protested, but never intervened. The Vraks were too powerful, and everyone was too afraid. That was the problem with the galaxy. The old empires had grown comfortable with their power. They saw newer races like humanity as irrelevant. When the Vraks attacked human settlements, the Council called it internal disputes and looked the other way. Humanity had learned to survive by being small and quiet, by not making waves, by accepting that they were bottom of the galactic hierarchy. James was tired of being small and quiet. His radio crackled. James, get down here now. Emma's voice was breathless with excitement. I figured it out. James ran to the elevator, Tom right behind him. They descended into the ancient chamber to find Emma standing before the crystal pillar, her hands pressed against its surface. The entire room was alive with light, symbols racing across every wall. It is a defense system, Emma explained rapidly. The whole structure. This pillar is the control center, and the machinery in the walls are generators. James, the ancients built this place as a fortress. When I synchronized my neural patterns with the system, it showed me everything. Can we use it? Tom asked. I think so. The system recognizes human brainwaves as authorization codes. It is like we are the password. Emma pulled up a holographic display that appeared directly from the pillar. It showed the colony, the surrounding area, and the Vrak's ships above. These generators can create an energy shield strong enough to stop orbital bombardment, maybe even strong enough to protect the whole colony. How strong? James asked. Emma bit her lip. I do not know exactly. The power readings are off the charts. This technology is millions of years more advanced than anything the Vraks have. Richard arrived, having heard the news. His face showed hope for the first time since the crisis began. Can we negotiate with this? Show them we have defenses and convince them to leave peacefully? The Vraks do not negotiate, Tom said. They only respect strength. As if to prove his point, alarms began blaring again. James grabbed his radio. Report. Sir, the Vrak's fleet is moving. They are taking up attack positions. We are receiving another transmission. Commander Kraz's voice boomed through the speakers again. Humans, your time is up. You have shown foolish pride by remaining. Now you will learn why the galaxy fears the Vrak's empire. Prepare to die. The transmission ended. On the orbital display, the 12 Vrak's warships began to glow as they charged their weapons. Emma, activate the shield now. James ordered. Emma pressed her hands firmly against the pillar, focusing her thoughts the way the ancient system had shown her. She felt the connection deepen, felt the vast power of the generators responding to her will. The pillar blazed with brilliant blue light that spread outward, racing through conduits in the walls, flowing into the machinery that had slept for millions of years. Above the colony, invisible to the naked eye, but clear on every sensor, a dome of energy materialized. It was translucent, shimmering like the surface of a soap bubble, but the power readings showed it was anything but fragile dot in orbit. Commander Kraz watched his sensors with confusion. What is that energy signature? He demanded. Unknown, Commander. his tactical officer replied. "The readings do not match any known technology." Kraz bared his teeth in what passed for a Vrak smile. "It does not matter. Fire all weapons. Turn that colony into glass." The Vrak's warships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains released their fury. Missiles designed to crack bunkers streaked downward. Energy beams hot enough to vaporize steel lanced toward the colony, and every single shot splashed harmlessly against the shield dot in the command center. James watched in awe as the colony remained untouched. The shield absorbed the bombardment without even flickering. Around him, his crew erupted in cheers. Emma stumbled back from the pillar, exhausted but triumphant. It worked. It actually worked. Tom was already thinking ahead. They will regroup and try again with more power. We bought ourselves time, but we cannot just hide under this shield forever. We will not have to, Emma said, her voice taking on a strange tone. James, the defense system has more than just shields. It has weapons, too. James turned to look at her. What kind of weapons? Emma met his eyes, and in them he saw both fear and determination. The kind that can burn ships out of the sky. The kind that can fight back. Above them, Commander Kraz stared at his screen in disbelief. His finest weapons had done nothing. These humans, these primitive creatures who barely deserved acknowledgement from the great empires, had just shrugged off a full assault from the Vrak's fleet. Impossible, he hissed. Increase power to maximum. I want every weapon firing at once. Burn through that shield. The Vrak ships charged again, pouring even more destruction toward the colony below. The shield held firm in the ancient chamber. James made his decision. They had been pushed around for too long. Humanity had spent decades bowing to stronger races, accepting insults, allowing their colonies to be threatened. Not anymore. Emma, James said calmly, show me how to fire back. Emma smiled and placed his hand on the crystal pillar. Just think about what you want to happen. The system will do the rest. James closed his eyes and thought about the Vrak's ships above. He thought about protecting his people. He thought about showing the galaxy that humanity was not prey. The ancient weapons awakened, and the sky began to burn. Asterisk the burning. The ancient weapons fired with a sound like reality tearing apart. Beams of pure white energy erupted from hidden emplacements around the colony, lancing upward through the atmosphere. They moved faster than conventional weapons, faster than missiles or plasma bolts. They moved at the speed of thought itself. The first beam struck a Vrak's warship amidships. The vessel's shields, designed to withstand modern weaponry, lasted exactly 2 seconds before collapsing. The beam punched through the hull, through decks and corridors, through the reactor core. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that briefly rivaled the system's red sun. Commander Kraz watched in horror as 2 more of his ships died in the same manner. Clean, precise strikes that bypassed every defense. His crew shouted reports and warnings, but he barely heard them over the roaring in his ears. Evasive maneuvers. He screamed. Return fire. All ships concentrate on the source of those weapons. But the ancient system tracked every ship simultaneously. Another beam fired, then another. A 5th Vrak's warship exploded. A 6th lost its entire forward section and began tumbling through space. Atmosphere venting from the wound dot in the ancient chamber. James felt the weapons responding to his will like extensions of his own body. He could sense each Vrak ship, feel their positions, know their movements before they made them. The connection was intoxicating and terrifying. James, your readings are spiking, Emma warned, watching her screens. The system is drawing power through your neural connection. Do not push too hard or it could damage your brain. James did not answer. He was too focused on the battle. 6 Vrak ships remained. They were scattering now, trying to put distance between themselves and the planet. He could let them go. The immediate threat was over. But he thought about all the human colonies the Vraks had destroyed. All the families killed. All the settlements burned. The Galactic Council had done nothing. The older empires had watched and allowed it to happen. James fired again. 2 more ships died. The remaining 4 engaged their jump drives and fled into deep space, abandoning their commander. On his flagship, Kraz stood alone on the bridge, his crew having evacuated to escape pods. He stared at the planet below, at the primitive human colony that had just destroyed 2/3 of his fleet. "Impossible," he whispered. Then the final beam struck his ship, and Commander Kraz knew nothing more. The silence that followed was deafening. In the command center, James's crew stared at the orbital display where 12 red dots had been. Now there was only debris. Tom broke the silence with a low whistle. "Well," he said, "that just happened." Richard looked pale. "We just destroyed a Vrak's fleet. Do you understand what that means? The Vrak's Emperor will not let this stand. They will come back with everything they have." "Let them come," James said quietly, still feeling the echo of the ancient weapons in his mind. "Now we know we can fight back." Emma was already working, analyzing what had just occurred. "I am picking up transmissions across the entire sector." Everyone saw what happened. "James, we just broadcast to the whole galaxy that humans have ancient technology, and we are not afraid to use it." She was right. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire. On the Galactic Council station, representatives from 100 worlds watched recordings of the battle. They saw human weapons cutting through Vrak's warships like paper. They saw technology that should not exist, could not exist, responding to human commands. The Kreth Collective, a federation of insect-like species that controlled 40 star systems, immediately dispatched observation ships to human space. The Yalan Federation, energy beings who rarely concern themselves with physical matters, sent urgent diplomatic requests to Earth. Even the ancient Torvan Union, eldest of all the current empires, took notice. In their towers of crystal on their homeworld, the Torvan Council convened an emergency session. They had seen ancient technology before, studied it for thousands of years, but never had they seen it activate. Never had they seen it recognize a species and respond to their touch. "This changes everything," the Torvan High Speaker said to her council. "If humans can access ancient sites, if the technology accepts them as inheritors, then they are not the primitive newcomers we thought. Or they are thieves who stumbled onto something they cannot control," another counselor argued. "We should take this technology for ourselves before they destroy something important." The debate raged while across the galaxy, humanity held its breath. On Nova Terra, James finally disconnected from the crystal pillar. He swayed on his feet, and Tom caught him before he fell. His head pounded with the worst headache of his life, but he was alive. They were all alive. "Get some rest," Emma ordered. "I need to keep studying this system. There is more here, much more. The weapons we used were just the surface layer." "What else is there?" Richard asked nervously. Emma pulled up holographic schematics that made no sense to anyone but her. "I am finding references to other sites. All across this sector, maybe across the galaxy. They are all connected somehow. This is not just one fortress. It is a network." Tom was checking reports from the surface teams. "We are detecting energy fluctuations from the northern mining region and the eastern caves. James, I think the whole planet is one big ancient installation." James sat down heavily. "How did we miss this for 5 years?" "Because it was sleeping," Emma said. "The system was dormant until we activated it. Now it is waking up, and I think it is sending signals to other sites. Before anyone could respond, the communications officer ran into the chamber. "Sir, we have incoming transmission. It is from Admiral Park, aboard the carrier Defiant. She is still 2 days out, but wants to know what the hell just happened." "Tell her we won," James said. "Tell her we just showed the galaxy that humans are not prey anymore." The message went out, not just to Admiral Park, but to every human ship and colony within range. They had faced the Vrax Empire and survived. More than survived. They had won decisively with weapons the galaxy had thought lost forever. But victory brought new problems. On Earth, the military command erupted into frantic activity. Scientists demanded access to Nova Terra. Politicians argued about what this meant for humanity's position in galactic society. Some wanted to share the technology. Others wanted to keep it secret. Most just wanted to understand how this was possible. In the Vrax Empire's capital, Emperor Vraxus received the news of his fleet's destruction. He was an old creature, scarred from 100 battles, ruler of an empire built on conquest. He had never known defeat. Now these humans, these weak mammals, had destroyed his ships and killed his commander. His advisors counseled caution. They suggested diplomacy, negotiation, perhaps even retreat. The emperor listened to their words and had them all executed for cowardice. "Assemble the war fleet," he commanded. "Every ship, every soldier. One want 200 vessels ready to jump to this, Nova Terra. We will burn that world to bedrock and scatter the ashes across space. The humans will learn what happens when you defy the Vrax Empire." His generals rushed to obey. Within days, the largest Vrax armada in a century began gathering. They came from garrison posts across the empire. Battleships and carriers, destroyers, and troop transports. The emperor himself would lead them, determined to crush this human insolence personally. Back on Nova Terra, Emma made a discovery that chilled her blood. Deep in the ancient system's memory banks, she found records. History stored for millions of years. She saw images of the ancients themselves, and her hands began to shake. "James," she called out, her voice barely a whisper. "You need to see this. Right now." James came to her station and looked at the holographic display. It showed an ancient, tall, and graceful, with features that were hauntingly familiar. "Emma, that looks almost human," she finished. "James, I think I know why the system recognizes us. I think I know what we really are." Asterisk the Empire's wrath. 3 weeks passed like a storm gathering strength. Nova Terra transformed from a mining colony into a fortress. Engineers worked day and night as Emma guided them in activating more of the ancient systems. The crystal pillar was just the beginning. Beneath the surface, machines older than recorded history hummed back to life. James stood on a newly constructed observation platform, watching construction crews reinforce the perimeter. He had been promoted to colonel, given command of all planetary defense forces. A title felt heavy. He was a colony security officer who had never fought in a real war. Now he was preparing to face the full might of the Vrax Empire. "The sensors are picking up activity in deep space," Tom reported, climbing up to join him. "Admiral Park thinks the Vrax are staging their fleet in the Kelvin system. That is only 3 jumps from here. How many ships?" Tom hesitated. "Latest intelligence says 200. Maybe more. The Emperor himself is coming, James. This is not another raid. This is an invasion." James looked up at the sky, imagining those ships gathering like a swarm. 200 warships against 1 planet. Even with ancient technology, the odds were terrible. What about our reinforcements? Admiral Park brought the 3rd Fleet, 30 ships total. Earth Command is sending the 5th and 7th Fleets, but they will not arrive for another week. Tom pulled up a tactical display on his tablet. We also have something interesting. After word got out about Nova Terra, other human colonies started searching their own planets. They found ancient sites, too. James felt his pulse quicken. How many? 7 confirmed so far. 3 have successfully activated their defense systems. The sites on New Boston and Terra Prime are particularly strong. Emma thinks they are all connected somehow, part of the same network. In the ancient chamber below, Emma was proving Tom right. She had barely slept since discovering the truth about the ancients. Now she stood before a massive holographic map that showed ancient installations across human space. Lines of energy connected them, forming a web of power. David worked beside her, his fingers flying over the controls. The synchronization is almost complete. If we can link all 7 active sites, we can create a combined defense grid. It is more than defense, Emma said quietly. She pulled up the historical records again, the ones showing the ancients. I have been studying their language, their technology. David, the ancients did not go extinct. They evolved. Evolved into what? Emma turned to face him. Into us, humanity. The ancients were our ancestors. Millions of years ago, they seeded Earth with their genetic material, then went dormant. They knew something was coming, something that forced them to hide. They left their technology behind, locked with genetic keys that only their descendants could access. David stared at her. That is impossible. Evolution does not work that way. Normal evolution does not. But the ancients were masters of genetic engineering. They could guide the process, ensure their descendants would eventually become human. Emma showed him DNA comparisons. Look at this. Human DNA has markers that do not exist in any other Earth species. Markers that match ancient genetic sequences perfectly. Before David could respond, alarms shrieked through the colony. James's voice came over the intercom. All personnel to battle stations. The Vrax fleet just entered the system. Emma and David ran to the command center. The orbital display showed a nightmare. 200 red dots materialized from jump space, spreading out in attack formation. At the center was a massive ship, 3 times larger than the others. The Emperor's flagship, a monster of metal and fury, called the Worldbreaker. Admiral Park's 30 ships looked pitiful by comparison. Her fleet held position near Nova Terra, small blue dots surrounded by a sea of red. But she did not run. Lisa Park had fought the Vrax before and survived. She would not abandon the colony now. All ships, this is Admiral Park. Her voice came through clearly. Hold your positions. Activate all weapons. Today, we show these bastards what humans can do. On the Worldbreaker's bridge, Emperor Vraxus gazed at the planet below. He was ancient even by Vrax standards, his scales scarred from countless battles. He had built his empire on the corpses of those who defied him. These humans would be no different. Begin orbital bombardment, he commanded. I want that planet scoured clean. Kill everything. Leave nothing but ash. The Vrax fleet opened fire. The sky lit up with thousands of weapons firing simultaneously. Plasma, missiles, energy beams, kinetic rounds. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds rained down on Nova Terra and struck the shield that Emma had expanded to cover the entire planet, the ancient barriers held, absorbing punishment that would have vaporized mountains. But Emma could see the strain. The shield is at 70%. They are hitting us with everything they have. We need to link with the other sites now. James placed his hand on the crystal pillar. He felt the connection immediately, stronger than before. He could sense the other sites, feel their power waiting to be unified. Emma, tell the other colonies to activate on my mark. Emma sent the signal. On New Boston, a captain named Helen Ford touched her crystal pillar. On Terra Prime, A scientist named Robert Kane did the same. Across human space, 7 sites activated in perfect synchronization. The energy network came alive. Power flowed between the sites, amplifying exponentially. The shield around Nova Terra blazed brighter, then stabilized. The bombardment continued, but now it was like rain hitting an ocean. Meaningless, futile. Emperor Vraxus watched his weapons fail. Rage built in his chest. Impossible. Nothing can withstand the full power of my fleet. Sir, his tactical officer said nervously, the energy readings from that planet are off the scale. This technology is ancient in origin. Perhaps we should withdraw and reassess. The Emperor backhanded the officer across the bridge. We do not withdraw. Send in the fleet. All ships attack. The 200 Vrax warships surged forward. Admiral Park's fleet met them head-on, outnumbered 7-1. The space between planet and fleet became a battlefield. Ships exploded on both sides. The human vessels fought with desperate courage, taking down 2 Vrax ships for everyone they lost, but they were losing. James watched the battle through the ancient sensors. He saw the carrier Defiant take a direct hit, saw it list and burn. Admiral Park was still alive, still fighting, but her fleet was being torn apart. The network is fully online, Emma announced. James, we have access to offensive systems across all 7 sites. The combined firepower is enormous. Tom pulled up tactical data. If we fire now, we can hit the main Vrax formation. We might be able to turn the tide. James felt the weapons humming, felt the power of 7 ancient sites waiting for his command. But he hesitated. They had already shown the galaxy they could fight. If they unleashed this much power, if they destroyed an entire Vrax armada, there would be no going back. Humanity would become a threat that every empire would fear. Then he saw another human ship explode, saw escape pods launching into space, saw people dying. The choice was simple after all. Fire everything, James said. The 7 sites released their fury simultaneously. Beams of white energy erupted from multiple planets, converging on the Vrax fleet. The network amplified the power 100-fold. Where single beams had destroyed ships before, this combined assault was like the wrath of a star given form. 50 Vrax ships died in the first salvo. The beams swept through formations, punching through hulls like they were paper. Another 30 ships exploded as secondary strikes found their reactors. The remaining Vrax vessels scattered in panic, all formation lost. Emperor Vraxus stood frozen on his bridge, watching his fleet burn. In 40 years of conquest, he had never imagined defeat was possible. Now he watched it consume his ships like a plague. All ships retreat. He finally roared. Jump to emergency coordinates. But James was not done. He tracked the world breaker through the ancient sensors. The flagship was massive, heavily armored, protected by shields that had withstood planetary bombardment. It was the symbol of Vrax power, the Emperor's pride. James concentrated every remaining site's power on that single target. The combined beam that struck the world breaker was visible from the surface, a pillar of light connecting planet to sky. The flagship's shields collapsed instantly. The beam carved through the ship from bow to stern, bisecting it completely. Emperor Vraxus had 1 second to realize his empire was over. Then his ship exploded in a blast that could be seen from 3 star systems away. The surviving Vrax ships jumped blindly into deep space, fleeing in every direction. Of the 200 ships that attacked, fewer than 40 escaped. The rest became debris orbiting Nova Terra, a graveyard marking humanity's defiance. Ashes of empire. The Vrax Empire collapsed within a month. Without their emperor, without their war fleet, the conquered world saw opportunity. Rebellions erupted on a dozen planets. Vrax governors were overthrown. Systems that had suffered under their rule for generations finally broke free. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries crumbled into dust. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session on their station orbiting the neutral world of Concordia. Representatives from every major civilization filled the grand chamber. Today, for the first time in history, humans sat at the central table instead of the outer edges. James wore a crisp military uniform, his new rank of general feeling strange on his shoulders. Emma sat beside him in civilian clothes, uncomfortable with the formal setting. Admiral Park completed their delegation, her arm in a sling from injuries sustained in the battle. The Torvin High Speaker, a being of crystalline beauty named Lyra, called the session to order. Her voice resonated through the chamber like music. We are here to discuss the human situation. In 1 month, humanity has revealed ancient technology, destroyed a major empire, and fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power. The Council must decide how to respond. A representative from the Kreth Collective, an insectoid creature named Speaker Zek, rose to address the chamber. The humans have violated the Preservation Treaty. Ancient sites are protected. They should be removed from human control and placed under Council authority. The Preservation Treaty applies to discovered sites, Emma countered, standing to speak. We did not discover these sites. They awakened for us because we are the rightful inheritors. The ancients were human ancestors. We have genetic proof. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Yalan Federation representative, an energy being barely contained in a crystalline vessel, spoke in tones that vibrated the air. This claim is extraordinary. If true, it means humans are the inheritors of the greatest civilization in galactic history. It is true, Emma said firmly. She displayed holographic data showing DNA comparisons, ancient records, and genetic markers. The ancients did not vanish. They evolved. They became us. These sites were left for their descendants to find when we were ready. Ready? Speaker Zek clicked his mandibles in agitation. You are children playing with weapons you do not understand. You destroyed an entire fleet. What is to stop you from doing the same to any empire that displeases you? James stood now, his voice calm but hard. We did not attack the Vrax. They attacked us. They gave us an ultimatum to abandon our home or die. We chose to defend ourselves. Any species in this chamber would have done the same. The humans are dangerous, another voice called out. They must be contained before they become a threat to us all. Admiral Park laughed, a harsh sound that silenced the chamber. Contained? You mean destroyed. Let me be clear. We have activated 7 ancient sites. Intelligence suggests there are hundreds more across the galaxy, maybe thousands. If you attack humanity, those sites will awaken. Are you prepared to face that? The threat hung in the air like smoke. The council members looked at each other nervously. The Torvin High Speaker raised her hand for silence. Threats will not serve us here. We must find a path forward that ensures galactic stability. Then I propose an alliance, James said. A coalition of free worlds. Any species that wishes to join can have equal standing. No empire, no hierarchy. Just cooperation and mutual defense. Preposterous, Speaker Zek hissed. The Council has maintained order for 10,000 years. We do not need human ideas about equality. Your council maintained order by allowing strong empires to prey on weak ones. Emma shot back. The Vrax destroyed human colonies for years, and you did nothing. You watched and called it internal disputes. That is not order. That is cowardice. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some supported the humans. Others condemned them. The old order was fracturing, and everyone could feel it. High Speaker Lyra called for order again. The human proposal has merit. I move that we take a vote. Those in favor of recognizing the coalition of free worlds as a legitimate alliance. It was not everything, but it was a start. As the session ended, representatives from a dozen smaller species approached James. They were tired of living in fear, tired of being prey for stronger empires. The coalition of free worlds gained 12 members that day. Back on Nova Terra, Tom supervised the investigation of the captured Vrax survivors. Emperor Vraxus had died, but several officers and crew had been recovered from escape pods. They sat in holding cells now, awaiting trial for war crimes. Among the prisoners was a young Vrax soldier named Krell. Unlike his superiors, Krell showed no arrogance. He looked at Tom through the energy barrier and spoke in halting English. "Your people fought well. The Emperor underestimated you. We all did. Will there be more attacks?" Tom asked. Krell shook his head. "The Empire is finished. Without the Emperor, the noble houses fight each other for control. They have no time for war with humans. You broke us." Tom felt no satisfaction in the words. War was ugly. Even when you won Dot in the ancient chamber, Emma made another discovery. The crystal pillar showed her something new, something that made her blood run cold. She immediately called James and Admiral Park. "Look at this," she said, pointing to deep space sensor readings. "The ancient network is detecting something at the edge of the galaxy. Something big." The holographic display showed stars going dark in a pattern. Not naturally. Something was consuming them, moving steadily toward the core of the galaxy. "What is that?" Admiral Park asked. "I do not know," Emma admitted, "but I found references in the ancient records. They called it the Harvesters. It is why the ancients went dormant. They were not hiding from other species. They were hiding from something much worse." James stared at the advancing darkness. "How long until it reaches us?" "At current speed? Maybe 5 years. Maybe less." Emma pulled up more data, her hands shaking. "The ancients built this network as a defense against the Harvesters. They left it for us because they knew we would need it. So all of this," Admiral Park said slowly, "the sites, the weapons, the power, it was not meant for fighting other species. It was meant for fighting that." Emma nodded. "The Harvesters destroyed ancient civilization once before. Now they are coming back, and we are all that stands in their way." James looked at the data, processing what this meant. Humanity had just fought its way to recognition in galactic society. They had shown they could defend themselves. But this new threat made the Vrax Empire look like children playing soldier. "We need to warn the Council," James said. "All the squabbling, all the politics, none of it will matter if that thing reaches us. Will they listen?" Tom asked, having joined them. "They will have to," Admiral Park said grimly. "Because ready or not, humanity just became the first line of defense for the entire galaxy." Over the next months, more ancient sites activated across human space. Teams led by Emma worked to understand the full network. They found weapons platforms, shield generators, and ships. Ancient ships still functional after millions of years, waiting in hidden docks for the day they would be needed. A coalition of free worlds grew. 20 species joined, then 30, then 50. They trained together, shared technology, prepared for what was coming. Not all of the galactic community joined. The larger empires watched nervously. Unsure whether humanity was savior or threat, James stood on Nova Terra's surface one evening, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the Harvesters approached. The ancient technology responded to humanity because they were the inheritors of a legacy written in genetic code millions of years ago. Emma joined him, following his gaze upward. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," James admitted. "We barely survived the Vrax. How do we fight something that destroyed the ancients?" "We do not fight alone," Emma said. We have allies now. We have the network. And we have something the ancients did not. What is that? Emma smiled. We have humanity. We are stubborn, adaptable, and we refuse to quit. The ancients knew that. It is why they chose Earth, why they left their legacy for us. James nodded slowly. In the distance, construction crews worked on new defenses. Human ships patrolled the system alongside vessels from allied species. The coalition was preparing. The hidden power of humanity had burned one empire to ash. Now it would face a threat that could burn the galaxy. But humans had learned something important. They were not alone. They were not weak. And they would not surrender. Above them, the stars shone bright against the darkness. For now, the night was peaceful. But James knew that peace would not last. The harvesters were coming, and when they arrived, humanity would be ready. The edge of the stars was burning. And from those ashes, something new was being born. Not an empire of conquest, but an alliance of hope. The galaxy was changing, and humanity stood at the center of that change. The real war was still ahead. But for the first time in galactic history, the younger races had a champion. They had ancient technology. They had the coalition. They had humanity, and that made all the difference. Asterisk.